There is a subtle difference between honest criticism and hidden resentment. When someone secretly dislikes you, their criticism rarely arrives as open disagreement. Instead, it appears in the form of small remarks that seem harmless on the surface but carry a quiet intention beneath them. A person might comment on your choices, your plans, or even your personality in a way that feels slightly dismissive. These remarks are usually framed as jokes, observations, or casual opinions, which makes them difficult to challenge directly. If you react strongly, they can quickly claim they meant nothing serious. This creates a confusing situation where the message is negative, but the delivery appears harmless. Over time, these repeated comments slowly shape how you feel about yourself. They may cause you to question decisions that once felt clear and confident. The person delivering these remarks maintains a polite appearance while still expressing their dissatisfaction. This pattern is one of the most common behaviors of someone who secretly holds negative feelings toward you. Their words are rarely loud or aggressive. Instead, they are carefully measured so they can release their frustration without exposing their true intentions. Recognizing this pattern is important because it protects your perspective. When you understand that these comments are not truly constructive, you stop absorbing them as truth. You begin to see them as reflections of the other person's attitude rather than accurate descriptions of your character or abilities. The key is learning to observe patterns rather than reacting to individual statements. One comment might be harmless, but repeated remarks that subtly undermine you reveal a deeper emotional dynamic. Once you notice this pattern, you gain a new sense of clarity. You realize that not every piece of criticism deserves your attention or your energy. Some remarks are not meant to help you grow. They are simply quiet expressions of hidden resentment. When you recognize this difference, you can listen calmly, maintain your composure, and continue moving forward without allowing those words to define your direction. In this way, awareness becomes a powerful form of protection, allowing you to preserve confidence even in environments where not everyone around you wishes to see you succeed. When someone secretly carries negative feelings toward you, one of the clearest patterns appears in the way they react to your success. Supportive people naturally feel joy when they see someone they care about moving forward. Their response is warm, encouraging, and genuine. However, a person who quietly resents you often struggles with this moment. Instead of celebrating your progress, they react with indifference or subtle dismissal. You may notice that when you share good news, their response feels unusually flat. They might say something brief and quickly move the conversation in another direction. Sometimes they respond with comments that reduce the importance of what you have achieved. They might suggest that the result happened because of luck, timing, or help from others, rather than recognizing the effort you invested. These reactions are rarely loud or openly negative, which is why they can be difficult to identify at first. On the surface, the conversation continues normally, yet the emotional support that should naturally appear is missing. Over time, this pattern becomes clearer. Each achievement you share receives a similar reaction, one that feels distant rather than encouraging. This behavior often reveals an internal discomfort with your progress. Your growth challenges the quiet narrative they have built about you, so they attempt to shrink the significance of your success in order to protect that belief. Understanding this dynamic can be important for maintaining your confidence. If you rely on the approval of someone who secretly resents your progress, you may begin to question the value of your accomplishments. The healthiest response is not confrontation, but awareness. When you recognize that their reaction is shaped by their own emotions rather than the quality of your work, their opinion loses its power over your confidence. Your achievements remain meaningful, regardless of how someone chooses to react. In fact, learning to celebrate your progress without depending on external validation is one of the most powerful forms of personal stability. The people who genuinely care about your well-being will naturally express pride and encouragement when they see you advancing. Their reactions will feel sincere, and their support will strengthen your motivation. By noticing the difference between genuine celebration and quiet dismissal, you become more aware of the emotional landscape around you. This awareness allows you to appreciate the voices that truly support your journey, while calmly accepting that not everyone around you is comfortable with your growth. Another revealing pattern appears when negativity is delivered in the form of advice. On the surface, advice sounds helpful. It often arrives with a calm tone, thoughtful words, and the appearance of concern. Yet when someone secretly dislikes you, their advice follows a different rhythm. Instead of guiding you toward improvement, it quietly steers you toward doubt. They may repeatedly question your decisions, warn you about risks that seem exaggerated, or suggest that your plans are unrealistic. Each individual comment might sound reasonable on its own, which is why this behavior can remain unnoticed for a long time. But when you observe the pattern carefully, you begin to see that the focus is almost always on limitation rather than possibility. The advice rarely strengthens your confidence or helps you develop clarity. Instead, it slowly encourages hesitation. This type of guidance can feel confusing because the person presenting it often appears thoughtful and supportive. They may say they simply want to protect you from disappointment or help you avoid mistakes. However, true guidance does not consistently shrink your sense of potential. Real wisdom points out challenges while also strengthening your belief that growth is possible. Hidden resentment, on the other hand, often disguises itself as caution. The person may repeatedly remind you of obstacles, highlight past failures, or emphasize why something might not work. Over time, hearing these messages can influence the way you see your own goals. You may begin to hesitate before taking action, wondering whether your ambitions are too large or too uncertain. Recognizing this pattern is important because it allows you to separate sincere guidance from disguised discouragement. The difference lies in the effect the words have on your mindset. Supportive advice expands your perspective and equips you with tools to improve. Negative advice disguised as concern leaves you feeling smaller and less certain about your direction. Once you learn to recognize this difference, you gain greater control over whose opinions you allow to influence your choices. You can still listen respectfully, but you do not need to absorb every warning as truth. Some voices around you may speak from genuine care, while others speak from quiet discomfort with your progress. When you understand this distinction, you become more capable of protecting your motivation and continuing forward with clarity, even when the voices around you sound reasonable but carry a hidden undertone of doubt. Another clear sign of hidden resentment appears during moments when support is truly needed. Many people can appear friendly during comfortable situations when conversations are light and expectations are small, but real relationships reveal their strength when challenges appear. When you are working towards something meaningful or facing a difficult period, genuine supporters naturally step closer. They offer encouragement, attention, and sometimes practical help. Their presence communicates belief in your ability to move forward. A person who secretly dislikes you often behaves very differently during these moments. They may still speak politely and maintain the appearance of friendliness, but their involvement becomes distant and minimal. You might notice that when you share a challenge or ask for encouragement, their responses feel brief or indifferent. They may quickly change the topic, give a vague reply, or simply remain silent. This absence of meaningful support can feel confusing because their earlier behavior suggested friendliness. However, hidden resentment often reveals itself through withdrawal rather than confrontation. The person prefers to remain uninvolved in your struggles or your growth because neither situation serves their internal narrative about you. If you overcome the challenge, your strength becomes visible. If you struggle, offering support would require emotional investment they are not willing to give. As a result, they stay on the sidelines, observing rather than participating. Over time, this pattern becomes easier to recognize. Their friendliness appears during casual moments, yet disappears when loyalty and encouragement are most valuable. Understanding this behavior helps you see the difference between surface-level politeness and genuine connection. True allies show their support through consistent action, especially when the situation requires patience and empathy. Their encouragement may be simple, but it carries sincerity and presence. When someone repeatedly avoids offering that presence, their silence communicates more than their polite words ever could. Recognizing this dynamic protects your emotional energy. Instead of expecting support from people who have quietly withdrawn, you can focus your attention on those who consistently stand beside you during both progress and difficulty. This awareness does not require anger or confrontation. It simply allows you to understand the reality of the relationship and adjust your expectations accordingly. By observing who remains present during meaningful moments, you begin to see clearly who values your growth and who prefers to remain distant from it. Another behavior often appears in the way certain people talk about you when you are not present. Someone who secretly dislikes you rarely attacks your reputation directly. Open criticism would reveal their true feelings too clearly. Instead, they influence conversations in a quieter way by introducing small doubts. These remarks often sound casual and harmless. They might say something that appears like a simple observation, yet it carries a subtle question about your character or reliability. For example, they may suggest that you sometimes make unpredictable decisions or that your plans seem uncertain. Statements like these do not sound openly hostile, but they plant a quiet seed in the minds of others. Over time, repeated comments can slowly shape how people begin to view you. This method allows the person to maintain the appearance of fairness while quietly shaping the narrative around you. Because these conversations happen in private settings, the pattern can remain hidden for a long time. You may eventually notice that certain people seem hesitant around you or that misunderstandings appear without clear explanation. Often the source of this change lies in subtle remarks shared in earlier conversations. The person spreading these comments may even appear friendly when speaking directly with you, which makes the situation feel confusing. However, the contrast between their friendly tone and the doubts they introduce in other discussions reveals the deeper pattern. Understanding this behavior is important because it helps you avoid reacting with unnecessary frustration. Attempting to confront every rumor or defend yourself against every small comment often drains energy without solving the problem. The most effective response is consistency. When your actions repeatedly demonstrate honesty, reliability, and respect, the quiet doubts eventually lose their influence. People naturally begin to notice the difference between a rumor and the reality they experience with you directly. Integrity becomes a stronger voice than hidden criticism. Over time, those who genuinely observe your behavior will form their own understanding rather than relying on secondhand impressions. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to remain calm and focused rather than becoming distracted by unseen conversations. Not every negative remark deserves your attention, especially when your consistent character provides a clearer answer than any explanation you could offer. By remaining steady in your behavior and intentions, you allow truth to reveal itself naturally, even in environments where hidden resentment attempts to quietly shape the story. Another revealing behavior appears in the way certain people respond to your mistakes. Everyone experiences moments where plans fail, decisions do not work as expected, or circumstances become difficult. In healthy relationships, these moments are usually met with patience and understanding. Supportive people recognize that mistakes are a natural part of growth, so their response often includes encouragement and perspective. They may help you see what can be learned from the situation, while reminding you that one setback does not define your abilities. However, when someone secretly dislikes you, their reaction to your mistakes often carries a different tone. Instead of focusing on recovery or learning, their attention remains fixed on the failure itself. They may bring up the mistake repeatedly or highlight it in conversations long after the situation has passed. Sometimes their reaction includes a subtle sense of satisfaction that is difficult to describe but easy to notice. It might appear in a small smile, a prolonged silence, or a comment that quietly reinforces the error. These reactions are rarely loud or openly hostile, which is why they can be overlooked at first. Yet when the pattern repeats, it becomes clear that your struggles hold a different meaning for them. A mistake provides confirmation of the negative expectations they already carry. Rather than viewing the situation as temporary, they treat it as evidence that supports their earlier doubts about you. Over time, hearing these reminders can become discouraging, especially if the same moment is used to define your abilities again and again. Recognizing this behavior is important because it protects the way you interpret your own setbacks. Mistakes are valuable teachers when they are approached with honesty and reflection. They lose that value when they are repeatedly used as tools of criticism. Once you become aware of this pattern, you can respond with calm perspective rather than frustration. You can acknowledge the lesson contained in the mistake while refusing to accept the exaggerated meaning someone else tries to attach to it. In doing so, you maintain control over how your experiences shape your confidence. Growth comes from learning, not from carrying the weight of someone else's quiet judgment. When you understand this difference, you gain the freedom to continue improving without allowing hidden resentment to define your journey. Another pattern often appears through subtle signals that are not spoken at all. Human communication is shaped not only by words, but also by tone, expression, posture, and small reactions that occur almost automatically. A person who secretly dislikes you may still speak politely, yet their body language quietly reveals discomfort. During conversations, they might avoid sustained eye contact, shift their posture away from you, or show signs of impatience when you speak about something meaningful. These signals are usually brief, appearing only for a moment before the person quickly returns to a neutral expression. Because they happen quickly, they can easily be dismissed as unimportant. However, when the same reactions appear repeatedly, they begin to form a pattern that becomes difficult to ignore. Words can be carefully chosen and controlled, but emotional reactions often appear through small gestures before the mind has time to hide them. This is why observing overall behavior is often more revealing than focusing only on what someone says. Someone who secretly resents you may compliment you with polite words, yet their tone may feel forced or distant. They might listen while you speak, but display little genuine interest in the details of your thoughts or experiences. The emotional warmth that normally accompanies real connection feels absent. Over time, these small signals create an atmosphere that feels slightly tense or uncomfortable, even if the conversation itself remains polite. Recognizing these signals does not mean assuming negative intentions immediately. Everyone has moments of distraction or fatigue that affect their expressions. The difference lies in repetition and consistency. When the same subtle signals appear whenever you interact with a particular person, they begin to reveal the emotional reality behind the polite words. Understanding this dynamic allows you to interpret social situations with greater clarity. Instead of relying solely on statements that may be carefully constructed, you learn to notice the overall harmony between words and behavior. Genuine goodwill usually appears through relaxed expressions, attentive listening, and a tone that carries natural warmth. Hidden resentment often produces the opposite effect, where the words remain friendly, but the emotional energy feels restrained. By observing these signals calmly, you develop a clearer awareness of the relationships around you. This awareness helps you understand who truly values your presence and who simply maintains politeness while carrying a quieter, less supportive attitude. One of the final and most noticeable patterns appears in the quiet distance that slowly grows within the relationship. When someone secretly dislikes you, they rarely create sudden conflict or openly end the connection. Instead, the change often happens gradually. At first, everything appears normal. Conversations continue, greetings remain polite, and interactions seem friendly on the surface. Yet over time, something begins to shift. The depth of communication becomes smaller. Meaningful discussions slowly disappear and are replaced with short, routine exchanges. Invitations become less frequent, and shared moments that once felt natural begin to fade away. This distance is rarely explained directly. The person may continue to behave respectfully, which makes the change feel confusing. However, the emotional connection that once existed quietly weakens. This behavior allows them to avoid confrontation while still creating space between you and them. From their perspective, distance feels safer than honesty. They do not need to reveal their true feelings, and they can still maintain the appearance of being polite or friendly. For the person experiencing this change, the situation can feel uncertain because nothing dramatic has happened. Yet the relationship no longer carries the same warmth